Welcome to the August 23rd, 2012 meeting of the Lake Forest Building Review Board. I am Peggy Vignocchi, Chairman of the Building Review Board. At this time, I will ask members of the board to please introduce themselves.
Maddie Dugan, 3rd Ward.
Steuart Trey, 2nd Ward.
Charlie King.
And John Clair.
Would members of city staff please introduce themselves?
Megan O'Neill. Kathy Cerniak.
Thank you. The board is here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, architects, neighbors, and interested citizens, to continue the long tradition that allows Lake Forest residents and businesses to work together to preserve the qualities and the unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. We recognize the personal importance of each petitioner's request. Our goal is to respect the needs and desires of property owners while balancing the interests of the community as a whole to preserve and enhance its architectural character and landscape streetscapes. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Building Review Board, the types of projects that come before this board are those in which the property owners are requesting a variance to allow a home that is larger than permitted by code, are seeking a demolition permit and approval of a replacement structure, or otherwise involve issues that could not fully be resolved by city staff. It is important to note that over 95% of building permits are issued by the city without the need for any board review. Thus, the board typically deals with the most challenging and sometimes controversial projects. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and fair meetings. To achieve that goal, the board has adopted meeting procedures, and all parties will be provided an opportunity to speak. These procedures are outlined on the agendas available at the back of the room. This meeting is also broadcast on cable television. Speaking on behalf of the entire board and city staff, our objective is to provide a review process that is thorough, fair, and without unnecessary delay. The next order of business is approval of the meeting minutes from the May 2nd, 2012 meeting of the BRB.
I move that we approve the minutes of the May 2nd, 2012 meeting as written.
Any discussion? Okay.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Those are approved. The next item on the agenda is a continued petition. It's a request for approval of a partial demolition and replacement additions at 10 June Terrace. The owners and occupants are Lou and Lindsay Nero. Representative is Troy Mock, architect. Do we have any conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts from the board?
I would just like to go on record that I am a personal friend of the petitioners.
Thank you. And for the record also, I was not in attendance at the July 5th meeting when this petition was first heard, but I have subsequently reviewed the video and therefore am able to participate this evening. Thank you. You may begin. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Troy Mock. As you just alluded to, this project was presented previously to the board. So we are going to go over some of the things that we modified to the design given the previous meeting and our discussion with the subcommittee previously, and go over what we have done to sort of modify the design to hopefully appease all parties involved. I apologize, I am working on the iPad here today, so I'm just going to scroll back to the front elevation. At our previous meeting, there were 4 columns. The one column in the middle was 2 columns and sat on a one pedestal. It was brought to our attention that perhaps removing that detail, as it was inconsistent with the columns on either side, would be in our best interest, so we went ahead and made that change. Subsequently, the window between the far left and middle column was not centered in that. In the process of moving that window, we needed to replace the window, and in doing so, we didn't put the window back as it was shown on the front rendering, but rather used 2 windows that are of the same size and proportion as the existing window on the far right side. It was mentioned during the meeting that perhaps changing the proportion of that window would be beneficial. We agree, but as opposed to making one larger window that made furnishing that room difficult, we went ahead and made this choice, and this has been discussed with staff. So the changes on the front elevation that we think are helping move this design process through is the change of the middle column from 2 columns sitting on one pedestal to a single column, and the change and relocation of the window size of the window on the far left on the first floor elevation. This is the right elevation. Previously, the right elevation gable, this area right here, was craftsman, more craftsman in a way. It had 3 knee braces, knee brackets, and that gable projected out 18 inches from the face of the building. You can see here, in that location right here, that our eave overhang is no longer 18 inches. And we made that change because on the left side, on this side of the house, that 18-inch overhang projected into a side yard setback. So in reducing that eave size, the knee bracket detail no longer became an effective way of detailing that gable. So we've simply added let me go back to, we've added trim detail in this location. We've added this bracket detail in that location and used panels to accentuate the gable, similar to the panels that might be found on the columns on the front elevation. So bringing that detail sort of full circle and providing that detail in a couple different locations. Also, you'll see on the back elevation in this location, we've added a window. It was discussed that maybe the elevation needed a void, and since there was no furnishability issues there, such as a television set, we went ahead and put a window there, and we think it looks nice. You can see on the rear elevation that we've continued that same panel detail. In this particular location, we were able to do the knee brackets and project that gable out 18 inches. There was no conflict, but in terms of consistency, we thought it would be better to go ahead and make that same detail on the rear elevation as well. This is the left elevation, and again, simply showing the change in the knee. Here, this is actually the elevation where the 18-inch projection of the gable. This is sheet A8, I'm sorry. Probably having difficulty seeing that, but there you go. Sheet A8. This was the actual gable that projected into the side yard setback, so it was the catalyst of the revisions of all the other gables. These are elevations. I'm sorry if this scroll through here, but this is the iPad. And I actually believe that concludes all the revisions that we've made to the house since our last presentation.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask staff to present their report.
Thank you, Chairman Vignocchi. As was noted, this item was a continued item from the July 5th meeting. The modifications that were generally discussed by the board at that meeting were the need to comply with the side yard setback. As you know, one of your standards speak to setbacks being exceeded or met. So the modifications were made to bring that element into compliance. They revised window openings and placement for a more regular pattern, again, consistent with the residential design guidelines that you guys use to evaluate requests. Finally, the refinement and simplification to the material palette and color palette was discussed at length by the board to be more consistent and compatible with the color tones of the building. They worked with the subcommittee to achieve a better, more simple design. The board did appoint a subcommittee. Board members Dugan and Bleck were part of that subcommittee. And I would invite them to, or at least Board Member Dugan, to comment on the subcommittee work after staff comments. But the petitioner has modified the design and is presenting those drawings to the board this evening. The petition was also reviewed in July by the Zoning Board of Appeals for a front yard setback variance. This is an area of town where homes are set closer to the street, so adhering to the prevailing setback was something the board supported moving forward through the zoning board process. The zoning board did approve the project. They reinforced the building review board's concerns for drainage and did ask that a drainage plan be reviewed at the time of permit. With respect to that, I would like to add one recommended condition of approval to the staff report that you have in front of you. just noting that an engineered grading and drainage plan would be required as part of the permitting process for this project. Consistent with that, with the discussion from last month, the city arborist will continue to work with the petitioner to really make sure that the inches that were removed, there were a couple trees that needed to be removed to allow this addition, are adequately replaced on the property, and that those trees will not impede any of the natural flow of water. So with those comments, I would be happy to answer any questions, but do encourage the subcommittee members to provide some input.
Thank you, Megan. At this time, we will take it to the board for questions or requests for clarification from the board to the petitioner or staff. And as Megan noted, maybe we could start with you, Maddie. Thank you.
Well, we had a very fruitful meeting with the petitioner, and they were very amicable to make all the changes that we had suggested. I think it would be good if you could take us through the color palette samples that you brought.
Judy and I apologize for this. I'm trying to hold this up, but
Troy, could you please use the microphone?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Right
You
there.
could- There's that handheld one you may
Right there.
work with. There you go, thank you.
So we're doing white trim, white gutters, white windows, and white trim around the windows. So this is the window color right here, and this is going to be the trim color as well. And you can see we have the gutter color here as well. You're doing a more black asphalt roof, which is shown clearly on the elevation. And then, of course, this sample we did not have for you last time. This is the sample of the metal, standing metal seam roof that is going to be the shed roof that is shown there as well. This is the stucco color that has been, and even though it's a drive-it sample, it will be stucco. And this is a piece of precast concrete that, even though the rendering over there shows that it's white, I'm leaning towards using this very large brick mold around that door to provide just a little bit more accent to the door.
That's the door trim?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
the door
okay.
trim.
Okay.
Now, previously we were showing shutters, and I guess I should have mentioned that as well, and I apologize for that. We were showing shutters on the first floor. We removed the shutters, and we are going to go with a standard casing, which is white. And because we removed the shutters, there's a lack of accent trim. So the blue color that was previously shown, that was discussed, we're still up in the air. We might, because there's so little color, we might go with a wood window or wood front door, or still provide a color. So insofar as we'd be willing to provide a sample to the board at the time, or make a decision now, but we're still, because we're not doing a lot of blue on the house or a lot of accent trim color in the house, becomes, I think, a lesser decision to be made. We might just go with a wood door, stained.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it, Maddie? Okay, thank you. Do we have any further questions?
Yeah, I had a question regarding the garage. Is that existing? Will it be refinished to match the house?
Yes. It's currently wood lap siding. It's in disrepair, and so we're simply going to take the lap siding off and put the stucco to match the house.
And new shingles?
The roofing shingles, yes.
And new door as well? Or no?
Yes.
Okay. And drainage, obviously it's going to go to our city engineer, but that was one of my kind of bugaboos last time. It was that it appears that the driveway and everything sort of goes to that property line and then it drops off, and it also appeared by the drainage that I saw before that it looked like some of the backyard also sort of traveled to that right side along the driveway, and I just want to reiterate that I think that's important that get dealt with appropriately. But otherwise, I think I like how it's much simpler. Nothing in there makes me want to scratch my head and wonder why. There is that one side elevation that has a little chink in how the windows maybe don't line up, but you know what? That's broken up by the pediment of that roof line carrying through. I think it's a less important concern on that side. I think you've done a nice job in cleaning it up, and appreciate your work on that one.
Thank you.
Are those porch columns wood, or are they using that precast?
The columns at
Porch
the front
columns,
porch?
yeah.
They are wood columns.
Okay, okay.
They are wood recessed panel columns.
And what is the porch roof material
It is
inside?
a pack-clad standing metal seam roof.
Okay, and on the inside?
The
Underneath?
inside will be beadboard.
Okay.
And I think you were saying that the panels you have now on the gables and on the side elevations, is that going to be the same as the columns, I think you noted?
That is
A
correct.
wood- A wood
Yes.
product, okay.
And just so the board knows, we are currently developing a drainage plan. It's already being developed. It's already, Kevin Lewis, IG Consulting, is completing that as we speak. Well, maybe not as we speak, but is doing it.
I have a question. I'm just digesting what you had said. You originally had shutters,
That's correct.
and you're not contemplating shutters, but you would change or add some color by perhaps either the color on the front door or the front door trim. Is that what you said?
No, the first floor front elevation windows had shutters on either side.
Right.
Because of that, the shutters and then the front door the colors matched and became a much more prominent color. Since we're no longer doing shutters on the windows, I think it leaves us more open with the front door color, since we don't have to match the shutters to
Okay.
potentially go just with a solid wood mahogany door.
Okay, all right, okay. I understand now, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. At this time, we would allow anyone from the public who may have any comments regarding this petition. Okay, hearing none. Does the petitioner have any final comments? Mr. Mock, do you have any,
I'm sorry. No, I
any
do
final
not.
comments? Okay, thanks. Okay, we will then take it to discussion at the board level.
Well, I can start off. I think the petition's come a long way. I think it's something that the owners can be proud of, and it'll be very attractive. It'll fit well on the street, and it'll make it a livable house for a family of their size in this day and age. And I would certainly vote to approve it tonight.
Excellent, thank you.
I feel that the improvements for the front elevation by getting rid of the two columns right in the middle to try to keep that thing centered, the window centered. I like the two windows there that they've done, and on the right elevation, adding a window back in that family room rather than keeping that wall blank for a large screen television, I think is a great idea, at least looking at it from the outside. So I compliment the petitioner and the subcommittee in coming up with some nice tweaking to get it done.
Thank you.
I echo everything Steuart said. Very attractive project. Appreciate your willingness to work with us, and I support the project.
I agree with fellow board members.
Thank you. Okay. Do I hear a motion regarding this petition?
I move that we approve as presented, with any caveats that the city might apply toward tree preservation and construction parking, and obviously engineering, and I'm assuming also landscaping would be considered for this project with the scope as well. So the standard boilerplate contingencies. But,
Our second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is another continued petition, a request for approval of the demolition of the existing single-family residence and approval of a replacement residence at 158 Washington Road. Owner and developer, Jamie and Sophia Childs, Representative Jeff Lutster, project manager. Is there anyone who has any conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts? Hearing none. Good evening.
Good evening. If you could just give us one moment to set some
Absolutely.
things up.
Absolutely,
Thank
not a
you.
problem.
Are you on the system for this? Yeah. No, you know, I don't remember anything.
Good evening. I'm Charles Amaro. I'm Managing Director and Architect for Aspect Design. I want to introduce Jeff, who's the project manager for this residence, and will be introducing any of the changes, and both of us will be able to address any questions that you might have on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And also with us tonight is Jamie and Sophia Childs, the owner. I'd like to start tonight, again, addressing this is a continuation of our meeting from June 20th, which at that point we were directed to go to a subcommittee meeting to review details of kind of our porch elements, details around windows, eave details, and kind of scaling and massing to the north side of the home. So we met and worked with Megan and also with the subcommittee, with John and Peggy, which thank you for your time, and worked through a meeting, and then and also even after some of the drawings were produced, went through again a few more tweaks to come up with the final product we're showing you tonight. And if you would like, I can run through a little bit of the history of the project, or should I go into some of the things we've changed for this meeting? I think you were all at the June 20th meeting in regards to the demolition and everything else. Is there a preference?
Maddie was not here.
Oh,
okay.
But I've seen the video and.
Okay. All right, so if there's questions that come up, please ask. But maybe I'll just kind of jump to some of the modifications and changes. We are asking for a full demolition of the existing home there. Kind of briefly run through it. We did run through a pretty lengthy process of trying to keep the existing home structure and work with that, and working with staff. It was really brought to our attention that it'd probably be best to go for a full demolition and for a new project to meet all the variances that we would have had to do to try to keep the structure. The one thing we are doing, though, is keeping the existing garage and screen porch on the property, which is really, I think, a plus. And we are modifying that from an exterior aesthetic and enhancing, which is a pretty unique feature, is actually a screen room part of this building, and we're enhancing that also. And all those drawings are in front of you, and we can page through as we move forward. But I'll move forward a little bit to some of the points and changes that we made after the subcommittee meeting. And I've broken down for you on a single sheet of paper in your packet. There was 20 points, and then there's some finite details too. But some of the, and Charles, maybe I'll have you go to sheet AR2, our front elevation. The front elevation was modified initially. We had kind of different eave returns, details. We worked on the front porch element to align windows and columns, so everything was centered on the front elevation. We've minimized, there's a front projected bay window in the front, where comments before it was kind of, they thought was kind of heavy looking. So we've modified that to kind of enhance its details, scale back its roof design, and we feel just a little better scale now to the front of the home. Also to the front elevation, there was windows added inside kind of the porch looking through. There was also from our initial plan, there was some sloping grade by the front porch. So below the porch, a brick element was added all the way around the front, and we can go into the side elevation. And Charles, may that be a good place to go next, is if we go to AR5, please. This is the north elevation, which at the last meeting had probably the most comments in regards to kind of its size and massing and some of the porch and detailing. So we've addressed all of those, which we feel is a much better looking product. The projecting gable from the side there, we've lowered the actual wall height, which then in turn lowered the whole roof line down, which just brings the scale better to in how it translates to the homes next to it. We've also added and modified rear porch details, and also including brick elements there, and also adding windows on this elevation. We've actually added a total of 6 windows to the home now since the last presentation. And in kind of by great efforts, we've actually had to modify the master bedroom, bathroom plan, a bedroom, and a study elevation to make the windows work. But definitely by an elevation, it really enhanced the features of the home. And Charles, if you could go to the rear elevation, please, which is AR3. And on the rear elevation, also just wanted to point out that back porch. Again, that whole entire roof line was modified. Brick was added. We actually flipped the location of the door going into the kind of mudroom family foyer area, so then we could provide a window on the north elevation. And again, lowered that whole gable section facing the north down. And in all the details around the home were matched. We added some sill and apron trim to all the windows. All of the return eaves were modified to match accordingly, on all the roof lines. Also, too, in the previous meeting, we're also going with and staying with a simulated divided light window product with the spacer bar between. And actually, I didn't bring a sample today, but I'm hoping the window is quite prevalent here in the town for modern use instead of just single pane glass. But it gives it the authentic look. And also even the bars in the front door, the rear door, the patterns were changed, again, to be consistent. Charles, maybe too, if you could go to our, just want to show them the existing garage. Go to AR 18 and 19. And I just wanted to point out too, the existing garage element too. Kind of on the left side of the page is existing, right side of the page is what we're proposing. So we've actually enhanced the screening in the screen room, brought it down a little bit closer to the ground, added detailing to match our windows we're putting in, and also matching the eave details all the way around to match our home. Charles, if you go to 19, this is the kind of side and the rear. Again, changing screens, overhead door, changing the siding. Again, all the details now match the home. And then we also addressed some of the concerns just in regards to presenting the package, and is site engineering, landscaping. All of those items were also modified and changed. We've on the north side of the property, where the driveway, maybe Charles, if you could go back to AR1, please. On the north side of the property, where this is a shared drive to the home to the north. But to the north side of our home, we have left a 1-foot buffer for landscaping next to our drive, which goes back then into, meets in with the existing. So those are some of the highlights of the items we changed from our subcommittee meeting. And I guess at this point I would close and ask for any questions.
Excellent, thank you. This time we'll have staff present their report.
Thank you, Chairman Vignocchi. Again, this is an item that was continued from a previous meeting. This item was at the June Building Review Board meeting. At that time, the board did appoint a subcommittee to really work with the petitioner to refine the design to be more consistent with the chosen architectural style and compatible with the neighborhood character. This neighborhood, as you guys may be aware, has had several redevelopment projects in the past 10 to 15 years. Several of those have actually come forward in the past 2 years and have been before this board for consideration. The residential architectural design guidelines and the standards in your ordinance are really in place to help guide new construction and infill architecture so that there is seamless design in the streetscape. So we're not building things that are out of scale or out of character with the neighborhoods. I won't go into detail of the modifications that have been made by the petitioner. The presentation that was provided this evening did a pretty thorough job of identifying what was modified. But in general, all of the changes that were made relate back to the standards and design guidelines to have a more compatible replacement structure. I certainly welcome any additional comments and direction from the board this evening to help further refine the project if necessary. There are a lot of projects coming forward in this neighborhood that are probably getting ready to start construction. And what we have heard from a lot of the neighbors in this neighborhood are concerns with construction, parking, and drainage. So I think some of the conditions in your staff report this evening speak directly to limiting the number of cars that can be parked in the neighborhood streets. We've had some very successful projects that have required shuttling of workers to really make sure that it is a seamless process for the neighborhood. The other piece of this is to look closely at drainage. As with the previous project, small lot neighborhoods, certainly drainage is a concern. There's a condition of approval that speaks to the need for a drainage and grading plan, and also any additional calculations that may be necessary to determine and verify that the swales that are proposed on this property are adequate to accommodate the flow of water that goes through this property. The final piece that I'd like to talk about is the landscape plan. The preliminary plan that you have in your packet still needs to have some additional plant material added in order to meet the minimum requirements in our ordinance. Staff will continue to work with the petitioner to make sure that the inches removed for the tree in the rear yard are replaced, that any minimum requirements for new construction are accommodated on the property, not only to satisfy the requirements in the ordinance, but also to help absorb some of the water that does flow through this property in the rear yard. One very important aspect of this property is the preservation and protection of the tree in the front. So we will work closely with the petitioner through the construction project to make sure that tree is protected, because that really does add to the character of the streetscape. As the petitioner noted, this is a demolition request and a request for a replacement structure. So the board's action this evening, if appropriate, would be on both of those items tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Megan. This time we'll take it to the board for any questions to the staff or the petitioner. As has been previously noted, this petition did go to a subcommittee of which I participated along with John, and I think that I think we made a lot of progress. I think it looks very nice now, and I think that as you mentioned, we added 6 windows, so that was a huge feat, I think, and also, as you mentioned, it required modifying some interior spaces, which I think ended up all for the benefit. So I think, so thank you. That was a big deal to do, and I think changing the garage to match and the screened-in porch will make it look very nice. In addition to that, one question I'd like to start off with: could you go through how we ended up, because we hadn't, I don't know what our follow-up was, and I don't know if you remember, Megan, on the curb.
Oh, on the side of the,
yes.
There wasn't currently there is a somewhat of a concrete raised curb on the side of the house, which just through the natural course of building this home would be eliminated. And I believe with the engineering plans we do have, they are in your packet with the grading plans. I might refer to Jamie on that one, but I don't think that was actually needed to be put back into place. the actual curb that was running along the side of the house.
Okay.
Do you have any information?
Is this on the north side of the house?
This is on the north side,
Right.
correct?
If I may just interject, in talking with the engineer, because we're keeping the asphalt driveway as is, and possibly obviously redoing it once construction is complete, the swale, there's already an existing swale that exists between the two driveways, even though the driveways are connected. So the natural swale is already there and will continue to stay there. So nothing really, according to the engineer, the curb has no effect whatsoever on the drainage of the water.
Okay. Thank you. John, would you like to weigh in next regarding our subcommittee?
Yeah, no, I thought the subcommittee went really well. We had, as Jeff mentioned, we had one meeting. We seemed to cover all the points that you picked up. And I think it's consistent in its details. I think the location on all the windows makes, perfect sense to anybody looking at it. No, I think it turned out really well. I did have a couple of comments. I was going to ask the question about resurfacing the driveway. Obviously, you're going to lose a good portion of that when you do your overdig. And then, obviously, the construction traffic is going to put its damaged on that existing driveway as well. I wondered if you were going to resurface the whole driveway. You want to address that?
Yes, if you look at the engineering drawings, you'll see that there's new water service and new sanitary service that's going to have to be brought in, and that directly is right over the driveway, the existing driveway right now. So it will, like you said, be torn up.
Okay, but it's going to go back as asphalt, and it's going to have its engineering and its grading all figured by the engineer.
Correct. That's correct.
Because obviously, when you're sharing a driveway and you've got a completely impervious surface, we don't want your water going on somebody else. So
Absolutely.
that would be an important caveat. And maybe before I leave that sighting issue stuff and addressing some landscape, which is a little out of my bailiwick, we've got this nice brick treatment to the raised porches, and it appears you're covering it up with alpine currant. So I just question the logic in that. I mean, as an architect, a nice brick is something I'm a little bit tuned into. And it just, you just went ahead and spent a lot of money putting brick at the direction of the board, and I wondered if there was some thought you want to do to that, but I'll leave that into your hands. I had some elevation issues, two minor issues. Front elevation, please. That little window that's off to the right-hand side, I noticed that's in a bedroom, and that wall, as a way of mitigating the scale of the building to the north, was dropped down. Would you or did you consider doing a little shed dormer in that location to actually bring a decent window into that bedroom?
Actually, I think even at the subcommittee meeting, we talked about that. And I think we were even sketching that out a little bit, and we ran through this scenario. And I think we were thinking the whole point of minimizing that side. All of a sudden, we were adding height back to it, which I could see maybe working on that front elevation, but I think on that whole side, that north side elevation, we were again raising to the height. So I think what we were kind of thought of was to keep the bottom of the window lined up with the two in the front and let that roof just come on down. That was my recollection of what we were kind of working through.
Yeah, I know we kind of bounced ideas around. As I look at it now, though, it would appear it would be in your benefit to have a decent window in that bedroom. And I think the scale of, now realizing it does add,
well, and we
something
do
to it.
have
I think the
the-
scale of the dormer is a nice proportion for that elevation. And it wouldn't bother me on the side, considering it's
Going
a
up.
few feet in and all that. So I'll leave that to you. I do think what you've addressed in minimizing the scale is very successful. And I would just suggest you go ahead and entertain putting a dormer in there for the benefit of the room, and I think it would improve that elevation. On the right elevation, the north elevation, I did have a concern Might be a little bit more than just leave it into your hands, but I understand the logic of having those two windows down the center of that gable lining up. I don't like the composition that creates. And I noticed too in the plan that window isn't centered in the room, it's off to the side, and it's probably to achieve that center line.
Exactly, yeah.
To me, I think the better proportion would be to move that window over, 3 or 4 feet to the, where's that room? Yeah, you see the room on the top of the page, the window's shoved way over toward the center of that projection.
Oh, you mean to feel more balanced with the window?
I think
to
you'd have a
its
much,
right?
much more balanced composition on that gabled element if that window was pushed over, the first floor window centered was pushed over to the left, anywhere from 3 to 4 feet. So you end up with 3 things kind of balancing rather than 2 in the middle and one shoved over to the side. So that, I think, would be something I'd suggest we vote as a contingency on. But that's my opinion, and the board might not share it, so.
And that could easily work inside the room.
That's right.
And everything else, too.
So, but those are my only comments. I think you did a great job, Jeff. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
I have a question on the replacement of the driveway. Because it's a shared driveway, you'll end up replacing literally the whole driveway. You're not gonna just do your half, right?
I believe right now there is almost a demarcation between the two driveways.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, I don't believe they are connected, but I believe there is a seam already down the middle.
Oh,
of the
so
driveway.
it's feasible to put in
Correct.
your share.
Right.
And his share. Okay. All right, okay, thank you.
Are the, since there seems to be concern about drainage, are you planning on tying the gutters and downspouts into the sanitary to help the water, alleviate the water on the property?
We did not plan on doing that. The existing house as it is right now has it splashing on grade, which I think we were probably going to do the exact same thing.
Okay, but if engineering recommended it, you would be willing to?
We would take a look at it, absolutely.
Okay, right.
Would you refresh us all, and I know since Maddie wasn't here on the prior one, your reasons for doing the demo and what your
for
your
new,
alternatives
sure.
were to begin with? I'd like
Sure,
to
of
refresh
course.
everyone's.
And actually, in the, in your packet, I do, okay, let me find it. In your packet, there was a, I believe it's just an 8.5 by 11 sheet of a drawing that we initially started with of the existing home, and trying to work in. The existing home is just a one-story home. Let me just refresh my memory. It's about 995 square feet, one-story home. So the thought process was to add a second story to it. But the current home itself, its front yard setback is in the front setback by almost 10 feet. The side yard setback also is into the side yard setback. So to build a new second-story structure that would comply, we'd have to push the front back and push the side to do. And we did kind of come up with a drawing to do that with the house. And another thing with the house, too, it's currently about 3.5 feet raised out of the ground. So we're also running now into height issues. And just looking back at my notes here, I think when we first met with Megan, kind of went through a scenario, there was I think 4 to 5 possible variances we would have had to ask for to do the project. And then just looking at the project itself, it just wasn't that attractive either. I mean, we were really trying to force something on a structure that just wasn't really working that well. And then that was the point when staff kind of said, hey, you guys thought about just demoing this because you're building something that needs all sorts of variances and it's not that attractive. So that's kind of when we went back and kind of rethought the process.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, and there is also the front tree also in the home, which, again, we're leaving here too, in the process and is protected too.
Thank you. Also, I recall we had questions regarding the color, so maybe you could.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Let's talk about materials and color.
Yeah, that'd be
I
great.
believe the original petition had talked about a gray, and then at subcommittee level, you were saying it was no longer going to be gray and something in the beige family.
Thank you for bringing that up, because at the even in our initial meeting, we were kind of considering grays with white trims, stained front door, and then through subcommittee, the home to the north is a gray and a white. The home to the south, its upper level is kind of grays and whites. So we were kind of afraid we're going to be running all in the same kind of tones here. So the owners have selected. The owners have selected now a soft green siding color, which would still be a horizontal siding. The trims, the fascias, soffits, windows, all of the trim work around the windows would stay in white. And then the roofing color would be an architectural grade weathered wood, which fits in nicely with that soft green tone and really fits in nice with almost a shake look color as the cedar ages. So we, at this point, like to present those as our colors and materials. Oh, and the brick too, we're looking at like a used common, kind of a Chicago used common around the porch and the fireplace, anywhere where there's the brick.
Great.
And the front door is still a stained door?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Can we pull up the rear elevation, please? Just one question back there. Looks like you have lights. Are those above the two larger doorways in the back there?
Yes, those are light fixtures above the French doors. And actually, good point, those were actually modified after subcommittee also to minimize any of the kind of white noise you would see from a full glass fixture, or just the downlighting over the door.
And what kind of materials are you using on that? Is it going to be some kind of brass or something? I mean, what? It's not clear light.
Yeah, it's not clear. It'd be I believe almost like a patinaed material we're kind of looking at, kind of to go with the green tones now of the siding.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the board? Okay. Hearing none. At this time, we would invite anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this petition. Please step forward. Please step to the microphone and state your name. Yes. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Bob Pasquazi, 172 North Washington Road, which is 2 doors north of this property. I just want to make sure that the drainage is, the reason I say this now, that my son lives at 200, and that we had the same thing coming up, but they tore the house down, going to put up another big house, and then the builder said that they would swale the back end, and the water would be taken care of that way. Well, I got a hold of some people who were in that business, and they had to put sewers in. Fortunately, we eliminated that problem over there. And I think this is what has to be done over in this spot. This is a bad spot. We're getting all the water comes down from Wildwood. And it doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot of water. That's about it for me.
Okay.
Okay?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Mr. Pasquazi. Would the petitioner like to comment?
Yeah, I would
regarding-
just like to comment on Mr. Pasquazi's comment. One thing that the current home in its rear portion of the property, there is currently a catch basin in the back to catch water, and it was diverted to the front. It's currently there. So I think this was potentially an issue with the property, and the previous owner had started working on that as an issue. And of course, our new engineering would tie into that and work with the rest of our new proposed.
Thank you.
If I may just add to that real quick, I think the important thing to realize here is that nothing from the garage to the west is being disturbed whatsoever. So the grading is staying the same, nothing it will be changing whatsoever on the property. And that's where that basin is located. And I believe, as Jeff said, I believe the basin was put in because there was an issue in the past.
Thank you.
And actually, it's in the our grading plan done by Spees and Associates, which should be in your packet, but it's kind of the north, kind of west corner of the property. There's a little square with some writing in it, and it calls out catch basin with its rim and invert in there, just so you do see it.
Great, thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public who wishes to comment on this petition? Okay, seeing none. Do we have any final questions from the board? Okay, nothing. Then we will take it to discussion at the board level.
I'll start. I feel that, again, the excuse me, the petitioner and the subcommittee have done a great job. I like the addition of the windows. I have no problem with the proposed demolition of the existing home. The drainage should be addressed by the city engineer, and I believe that is. I mean, that's a requirement of the permit that happened.
That's correct, and I would just add that one of the conditions of approval does speak to that, and if additional calculations are required,
Right.
the petitioner would provide that to the city engineer.
Right. And as drainage is not really our bailiwick anyway, as far as building review board, but I feel that I can support both the demolition and the construction of the new home as presented tonight.
Thank you, Steuart.
Madam Chairman, can I ask that the other board members comment on a couple of my considerations on window to the north and a dormer on the front? Those were sort of some opinions I had, but I wondered where other members feel about those.
I can comment. I sketched it in.
Yeah.
And it isn't a bad idea. It adds a little to the massing, an irregular, as you're looking at it on your left side, a dormer up there would add a little to the massing of that roof line, which he's lowered, which is why the window is a half window. It would have to be set back some, you can't have it right on the gutter line, so I don't know if that would, on the interior, make a little alcove in the existing room to put that dormer in. But I don't disagree with it.
Yeah.
And your other comment was the window where?
On the north elevation, where the two are centered down the middle, but...
Yeah, I like that a lot, yes.
So shift the first
I think
floor
that should
window
be
to...
shifted to this, and I looked at that when we
Yeah.
were talking about it, when I looked at the interior thing, that could be moved, would be towards the street to...
Correct.
It'd be a better window, better light in the room and everything else, and I don't think the fact that it's not on center would affect the view of the north side of the home at all. I agree with that. I'm lukewarm, but not against the dormer on the small.
I like your idea, John, moving that north elevation to the left. I think that's good. Makes that room a lot more usable, and I think it would look great that way. I'm not quite as keen on the dormer. I think they've thought about that, and I agree it's going to change that roof and change the massing, and the neighbor to the north is just going to be more to see. So I'm not as I don't think that as critical. I would approve it without that, but I would like to see that other window changed. And besides that, I agree with Steuart. I'm supporting the demolition and the overall design with those that small clarification.
Yeah, and I agree with Charlie and Steuart on all those counts. I don't think the dormer's necessary on the east elevation. I like the north elevation changes. And I agree with the demolition.
Okay. I guess I would echo those comments. So from our discussion here then, let's ask the petitioner if he's willing to entertain the movement of that one window.
Yes, we would definitely move that over to towards the street of that window, and we agree with it also. I think it does
Right.
look better.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Jeff. We'll finish our discussion then. Do we have any further comments and discussion? No. Okay. Then do I hear a motion regarding the demolition of this project?
I'll try that. I'll move that we approve the demolition of the existing structure, not including the garage, at 158 Washington Road, and it will be replaced, but that's a second motion. I move we approve the demolition.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Demolition
Is approved.
is approved and passes regarding, subject to the replacement structure.
Right.
Do I hear a motion regarding the replacement structure?
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed plans with the addition of moving the window on the north side, on the first, I believe it's the first floor. Anyway, out of the center line and towards the road, or towards the east, to be in the center of the room. It'd be a more usable window with that condition and all the other conditions proposed by staff in their report. I move that we allow the construction of that the structure as proposed with those changes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries also.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Thank you
you.
for all your
Thank you for your
time and
time.
working with us on it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think it resulted in a great project for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next order of business is a new petition, a request for approval of additions to an existing residence located at 135 South Maywood Road. Owner is Steuart Dixon. Representative is Matthew Kerouac, architect. And I'm sorry, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Great, thank you. Do I have any conflicts of interest or ex parte contact from the board?
I know the petitioner personally, but I see no reason to abstain.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Kerouac, would you? Good evening.
Thank you. If it pleases the board, my name is Matthew Kerouac. I'm the architect for the project. I do want to thank Megan O'Neill for all of her help. This is my first time in front of the Building Review Board. I've done a lot of zoning back in the 90s, so I do appreciate her assistance on this packet. What we are trying to do is add what we hope is a very minor addition to this lovely home on South Maywood. We are trying to accommodate a growing household, which will include 2 adults and 5 children. Right now, the house has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a very small family area, and a single-car garage. Our goal is to create a residence that will have 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a larger family room area, and a 2-car garage. That's the genesis for this project. The existing home is a very quaint cottage, and what we're trying to do with our addition is to maintain the integrity of this. We're going to replace all the exterior materials with maintenance-free composite siding, an asphalt shingle to replace a dilapidated wood shingle roofing. If I can just go through here. So these are 2 elevation or pictures of the residence as is. Our addition will be to the right here. For the most part, that midsection between the garage and the main body is the family area that we want to expand towards the road and then create a larger garage to the right. The existing structure, we will take from the first floor, we'll take this wall out, move that forward, and expand this garage in this area. Because of the roof condition, in order to get to the bedrooms that we're putting above the 2-car garage, we need to expand the area above the, oops, I'm sorry. We're looking to expand the area above the family room, which was a lower pitched roof that kind of separated the garage from the residence. But in order to get to the new bedrooms that we're putting over the garage, we need to create the ceiling height. It's a 1.5-story structure, and that involves kind of maintaining this new dormer at the garage and then expanding that area. On the exterior, we are also wanting to create a covered porch, which would protect guests and also create a more inviting and engaging elevation to the front yard and to the park across the street. Within that, with our stepped back roof that we have on the left side of the residence, we chose to go with a side from elevation across from the left to the right roof structure that would kind of tie that whole front elevation together. And then within that, provide a barrel vault at the main entry to designate that as the main entry, to kind of bring the massing back to the main part of the house versus the new garage area. We do need a shed dormer on the south elevation to accommodate the bedrooms in that area because of the steep pitch. To get the adequate living space up there, the shed dormer would be required facing the side yard. And I'll leave it at that if you have any questions.
Thank you. This time we'll take it to staff for their report.
Thank you, Chairman. This property is in another small lot neighborhood. It's in the Northmore neighborhood. The homes are relatively close together, and the majority of the structures in this neighborhood, I would say, do not meet zoning setback requirements. This project is no exception to that. The addition of the new garage and front porch does require a zoning variance to encroach further towards Maywood than is required by code. And as you know from previous petitions this evening, one of the board standards is to ensure that setbacks are met or exceeded. In this case, there is a zoning variance request on the table. But given the amount of construction within the setback and the massing change that is proposed, the project is being brought before the Building Review Board prior to the Zoning Board review to give the Building Review Board an opportunity to provide some input and direction on the massing and design of this addition. The staff report outlines some suggested topics for discussion by the board. For example, board input on the size and depth of the front porch is requested this evening. Is the arch detail appropriate for the architectural style? Is the size and placement of that porch appropriate for the front massing of the home? The large shed dormer proposed on the side of the garage. It will be visible from the street and from neighboring properties. So just some consideration to the scale and size of that to be consistent with the architectural design guidelines. In previous approvals by the Building Review Board, staff is recommending that a closer look at where the eave falls in relationship to the window to make that a little smaller scale than what's currently proposed. The petitioner did provide sample materials of the proposed materials. They are similar to materials that have been approved by the Building Review Board in the past. So input and direction on that is also encouraged this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We are recommending approval with some minor modifications and any additional comments that the board may have.
Thank you, Megan. We will now take it to the board for any questions to the staff or the petitioner.
I have a question for the petitioner. What is now the existing connection between the main house and the existing one-car garage, are you proposing, you're probably proposing, you would knock that all down, you would build literally a new, because you're going to put a second story on it?
That's correct.
So probably that whole existing, be it a room, whatever it is
Right.
now, probably wouldn't support a second floor, so you probably knock that whole thing down.
That's correct.
And then make it a little, move it out towards the front of it.
Right. We cannot move out towards the rear of the yard because of that existing tree. We met with the forester, and he said that we cannot move any additions towards the rear. So that's why we're unfortunately having to bring the mast forward.
Yeah, and there's a window there. On the home section, you probably would cover that up.
That's correct. We're moving past that window.
Yeah,
that's correct.
And probably a better foundation and substantial to support a second floor.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, is that second floor? I haven't looked at the interior plan. Is that also along that path? That's also part of the bedroom? Is that correct?
What happens is over the garage, we have 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
And then in that middle area, because it's such a narrow area with that roof, really the main, there's probably 5 feet of true usable space.
I see.
It's a glorified corridor that we're hoping to kind of steal some space
Okay.
for a bathroom in the back and then a little seating area.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a heroic attempt to get to the spaces above the garage.
Yeah, I see. Okay, all right, I understand. Thank you.
Could you go over that front patio and the arch, the covered patio? I've looked at it a couple times. I just don't have a good feel for it. So maybe you could walk through the thought process, what you're trying to accomplish there.
I'd be more than happy to. It's a tough elevation because we have these large bays that, let me get to the original. So we have these 2 large bays, windows that stick out prominently from the house. And we also have a setback roof structure that defines kind of the stone front area. Looking at ways to create a covered porch, we looked at one that kind of just bracketed off with some type of roof structure, and that felt that it was squeezed and it kind of added a 4th element within that whole front elevation. We looked at doing a partial, and then that kind of kept adding to all of these elements. What we're trying to do is simplify this while maintaining its integrity. What we're hoping to do then is, let me just get to a quick perspective, is with this, is kind of unite that entire front with a very delicate, I hope, little roof structure. And instead of just creating this long line eave condition, is create a nice, I hope, elegant entry with a very subtle arched, giving it a little bit of character. We were looking at doing some kind of gable or pitched roof there, and I just felt that created, the proportions didn't seem right. It felt that it was fighting the other elements. So bringing this arch element to that, again, we're in a very subjective world, but I felt it was the most elegant solution to that elevation. And we did look at all of the other, doing just the right side, and then, and nothing really seemed to, that kind of created 4 separate little elevations doing that on the house. So we were hoping that this would create the body of the house on the left with that porch, and then the midsection that ties the house to the garage.
To follow up on that, what are the materials? What's the porch beam material, then the
Sure. The columns will be a...
ceiling and the columns?
Sure.
Thank you.
The columns will be a permacast, which will look like painted wood, and that'll be just painted white. They have what they call a Tuscan, a very elegant, simple square column, 10 inches, with a crown and a base, and then a secondary member. The roof itself will be a pre-finished standing seam. It will probably be some type of anodized bronze color to match to our weathered wood asphalt shingle. And then the barrel and then the underside of the porch will be a beadboard, probably a stained pine beadboard.
Okay.
And then the whole porch is at grade, so you're not stepping up. It's an extension of the yard. And we'll do that in a bluestone to match the patio in the rear.
Did you say the columns are round or square?
They're square.
They are square?
Yes.
Okay. And describe, if you could, the, underneath the bay windows, there's sort of a skirt that looks like it's just going down and touching grade. Is that an existing condition on those?
It is an existing condition. It's a flared 4-inch exposed wood slat. And what we would do is I'm not sure what the condition is underneath, but we would make sure that we have the 8 inches of, foundation there before we did our wood.
So you're going to put material over the top of the existing wood? Is it?
Yeah, at the last day of demolition, we're removing all of the wood. It's kind of all siding, all trim, but we are replicating. We love the look of the house. It's just when you come up to it, it doesn't maintain the integrity as you do from the streetscape.
And you've been out to site. Did you happen to notice if the grade is such? I mean, a lot of times with a house, over time, will have a tendency to settle, grade pitching in toward the house. I'm going to question that materials coming down and touching grade and a flush porch situation that also might have a tendency to draw water into the house. So, have you had a chance to examine that?
Yeah, it's heavily landscaped if we look at it, and I do agree with but the whole house is heavily landscaped, and it's hard to really get a true sense of the condition there. But I would not have a condition. I wouldn't create a condition where I bring my material to grade.
So flush to
we will
grade.
have an 8-inch gap or 6-inch.
And your porch as well, would it be completely flush, or is there some sort of a step there that might keep water from
No, we're looking
penetrating?
at that, and I do want to keep the porch flush, and then there's a step up, a small stoop at the entry. We just thought that was a lighter kind of design element than raising that whole out and being a large element on that front.
Okay. And I'm sorry, did you present the colors?
I didn't
yet?
present the
Okay.
colors, I'm sorry.
Why don't you go ahead and do that so we all get a good idea of what's...
So what we're looking at is a composite material for the siding, which would have an 8-inch exposure along the main body and then a 4-inch on that lower half of the elevation. And that would be in this color, which is a Cabot stain color called Glacier, and that's put on either the LP Smart side or the Hardy board. And so that will be a smooth finish lap siding. And then below is just our trim color. The white will be the prominent trim color around the windows, at the fascia, at the eaves, and at our gutters. And then our roof will be a weathered wood, 30-year dimensional.
And what is the trim made out of?
The trim is all composite material.
It's all, okay,
It will be.
and that includes eaves, soffits?
That's correct.
Looks like you've got trim with a stoop under the windows, and then it looks like you're changing the lap siding from 4-inch to 8 inches. You're moving up toward some sort of water table height there?
That's correct. And that's just mimicking what's on the existing residence.
Okay, so, but you have an opportunity to do something there that, and especially on the new, I'm looking at the new construction. I guess I'm curious as to why that 4-inch has its cap, and then there's just a few inches before you catch that window stoop as well, or sill, if you would. Why wouldn't you just take that change in plane and send that right underneath the window? I guess I'm curious as why it stops short of the window and then the window comes up. And then that's actually a little different than you see on the south elevation for the garage. It looks like you do have that line taking place at the windows.
That's correct. So the south is correct.
That's correct.
But the, are you saying on the north side? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the north side is existing. I'm sorry, can you repeat
No, I thought
where?
that was coming out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That
you're
part's
talking about
new.
the front.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
talking about the front.
Yeah, again, that's replicating what is there, and we would have no problem bringing that down to the.
Lower the windows
Yeah.
so that everything is
Sure,
at the
I
same
have-
height where that water table's
That's correct.
cap
Yeah,
and
we
the
were
sill of the windows lines.
simply replicating what is on there now,
Okay.
but more than happy to bring that down.
And then the material on the roof of the shed dormer is,
That's gonna maintain the asphalt. I mean, we looked at.
you're gonna put
maybe
asphalt
it's-
shingles on a
yeah,
112 pitch?
Looking at doing a,
I would consider you do
Do the standing
a
seam?
rubber, well,
Or-
or a rubber roof
oh,
membrane or
I'm
something
sorry, are you
like that.
talking, on the
The
shed?
flat section.
Oh, at the garage?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a rubber, I'm sorry, I thought you were
Okay.
talking over the porch, that shed. No,
Yeah.
at the garage is a rubberized. It'll
Okay.
be a single ply,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. That's all my questions for now.
Back to the porch, how far is that gonna extend now, outwards, on that front,
Sure.
covered porch now?
I'll go to this elevation. From the main body of the house, the farthest is 9 feet.
9
Our bay windows come out about 4.5 feet. And so what we want to do is ensure that it's a true porch and it's not just covering the bay windows.
And what about the height of it? It seems, like you don't have a lot of height there, just with the natural.
Well, and that's one reason to keep the porch floor at grade. You know, if
Yeah.
I brought that up 6 or 8 inches, it'd be even, I didn't want to create a double height there with eave condition for the house and then an eave condition for the new porch.
So is it 8 feet? Is it,
Yeah, it is 8 feet from the grade to the bottom
Grade to-
side of the, correct. And then it goes up once you get past the beam elements. Which is not atypical, it's not ideal, but it is the house is very low to the ground even, and I didn't want this to be a grand porch. I want it to be, maintaining the integrity of the existing residence.
okay, thank you.
I have a question. Staff is recommending the shed dormer, which would be to the south, and bringing the roof line down to just above the windows. Would that be something that's feasible?
It's feasible. What we're trying to do is, maintain a quality of space for these bedrooms.
I understand.
It's a give and take. Also, what the installation requirements and what I'd have to do, if I get it down on the exterior to the top of the window, that means on the inside, I'm even coming lower, to.
So, yeah, what would you be? Something under, like 6 feet, 6 feet height from floor to
No,
ceiling?
it wouldn't be
into-
that severe to do that. What I'm trying to, it's always a balance, and
I understand.
we would be more than happy to, look at anything that the board requests. We are trying to maintain a quality of interior space
I
also.
understand that.
And I don't want to, it is for me, it is kind of a hidden dormer for the most part. I mean, we do have a lot of trees on that side of the elevation. I'm not minimizing its impact, but for us, the give of creating a nice interior space versus a shed dormer that may be the most pleasantly, aesthetic for the neighborhood, even though the neighborhood's not gonna really see it. So
Yeah.
right now, our trade-off is give it to the kids.
Okay. All right, thank you.
To kind of follow up on that, I don't mind the dormer as much. It just seems like the garage massing is massive. It seems like the rest of the house is subordinate to the garage portion of the home. Especially because everything else is low.
Yeah, we looked
I have a
at,
concern.
if we turn the garage, then we'd have to have that shed dormer out front, which didn't appeal to us. We looked at how can we make that massing. Right now, we have a single car that has, I'll get to that, right. It's a very dainty garage right now.
Right.
And I'm not sure that I find that pleasing, though. It almost looks like an appendage. It doesn't look like it has the same level of integrity as the rest of the house. So I don't mind changing it. I agree with trying to minimize its massing. I know that that's been something that I do think that once we see, with the massing that we're creating with the new porch on the main body of the house and increasing the massing on that secondary space between the garage and the house. We looked at, do we make the garage a little bit narrower? And that would lower the roof down a little bit. I don't know if a foot would make a big difference. It means a lot upstairs, again, because of the severe pitch. Trying to get living space up there
Right.
is the number one, I don't want to go through all this and have rooms that aren't livable.
Have you looked at, I like the fact that the rest of it and the porch is low and you have the barrel there. I just wondered if maybe that roof form should be different to match.
The roof form at the garage?
At the porch.
Oh, the barrel?
Yeah, maybe not, yeah.
Yeah, in again, I'm in a subjective world, and you're gonna have your 10 points on that. I'm gonna have mine on the barrel. I do find this a little bit more pleasing than just repeating the same element, roof shape that I have everywhere else. Just give a little bit of, a little bit more attention. I do find that the way that roof up above hits, having that, if I did have a pitched roof there, feels like it's stopping at an awkward angle. It's just my eye versus your,
Okay.
It's not wrong, and I could try to defend it more than saying, I just find this a little bit more pleasing. I do think it's a nice element to the space. Gives it a little bit unique character. And we did look at that.
I do agree, I like the look of it, but that's only like if you cover up the garage, and then you suddenly pull up the garage, and it's...
Yeah, it's, a garage is garages are just large. When you have this scenario where you have a very humble house and you want to put a two-car garage on it, it's going to take up a proportion, of the overall elevation. And by splitting the doors into two, creating a frieze that goes all the way across the front of the garage, that kind of ties that in, and then with a nice window, kind of smaller window centered. I do feel that on its own, it's a nice elevation. It's just trying to either scale it down, creates, I'm not going to say it's not possible, everything's possible.
Right. Have you thought about possibly straddling those on a different plane, the garage doors?
We looked at kind of pulling one out.
Right.
And I think what that is doing, again, we have enough change in, if this was a very flat house, I would say that's an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But we have that going on, and I don't want to try to mimic the bays and the stepping that we have between the house and the garage by doing it here again. It's one of those things, I tell my clients, when you're trying to hide something and you keep adding to it to make it look pretty, you're actually drawing more attention to it than kind of making it recede a little bit. I'm trying to make the nicest elevation without drawing too much attention to it, I guess is my goal here.
Well, that's fair. I'm just want to propose
Sure.
ideas.
What size the garage doors?
Those are 8x8 doors.
Could you use smaller ones?
You could, it's, I wouldn't go narrower, and I would have to just make sure that, you know, if we went to a 7-foot, that we can get the, you know, some of those cars, when you get a little bit smaller, you have to be very careful with how you park in there. So I don't want to say yes without conferring with, you know, my client. What I do like about you know, with the garage at 8 feet is that it does line up with that frieze. In it, you know, we're not bringing another element in there. So as the windows kind of tie directly to the underside of the frieze, so does the garage door. So it maintains that simplicity between the house and the windows and the frieze.
Yeah, the two-door, now, let's say you went to a 20-foot wide one door, it probably would be the same. I mean, a single door. I like the two separate doors with, you know, with the separation in between them, because it fits in with the whole rest of the house.
Right.
I think, yeah. Which is, I guess, kind of what you were saying. So to narrow it, I guess, yeah.
I'd recommend going actually wider. I mean, an 8-foot wide door is very unusual these days. I mean, everybody with the larger
Yeah.
cars, 9-foot width.
Yeah,
by
particularly
8.
with a big SUV.
9080 is more typical
Can't
for
buy
a
SUV.
single door, so.
Yeah, I was trying to balance that with, you
No,
know,
Yeah.
not giving
I
up.
would recommend you go a little wider and kill some of that mass that's to either side of
Okay.
that door, and then you get the function along with the aesthetics.
I would welcome that change, thank you.
And you've got it. I mean,
But we're-
it's foolish to build another one-car garage, you know, so,
That's right.
in today's
Yeah.
world.
Right.
Can you answer a question about the detail on the garage doors? Is there anything in our packet that shows the details on the panels and those doors? Or
No,
can
I
you tell me
didn't
what
get
you
to
had in
that
mind?
level of, all I'd have to say is I hope we do the most handsome door we can. I don't have anything in the packet that shows that. I would be more than happy to submit it or get something to you. I mean, there's beautiful doors out there. It would end up being a white door. I wouldn't want to do a wood grain door
Right.
that is going to fade, or if you do a fake one, it looks fake.
Right.
So it's simply going to be painted out to match the trim of the house, and it would end up being a very handsome door from, but I could, if that's something that the board would request, I would be more than happy to forward that, or whatever the protocol is.
What's the purpose of that second door into the family room?
You know, the house has always had that, and it's kind of the side door to the house, so that when you come in, you're not walking all the way through the main part. Like, if I'm coming, Steuart works from home, that kind of becomes his little home office. It's kind of a secondary door for him to get into, and for the family, instead of going through the dining room to get out, it's a secondary primary door and it's part of the existing elevation. And we never really considered taking it out. It just always has been a part of that, you know, the house, and part of how they live in the house.
Okay. Any further questions from the board? Maddie, Steuart, anything?
No.
We're good?
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Comments, not questions.
thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your consideration.
At this time, we can, is there anyone from the public who has any comments regarding this petition? Hearing none. Does the board have any final questions? No? Okay, we will then take it to discussion at the board level. Who would like to begin?
I'll start. I think it is a handsome house. I think the architect has given this a lot of thought relating to staff's consideration of the shed dormer. I have empathy for the architect's point. He's trying to get as much height as he can. It's visible from the front, a little unusual, I think, from an angle that they could see back along the whole length of the thing. It's covered by a lot of trees. Now, that's not there in the winter, I understand that. I think he's pared the garage down quite a bit, almost to the point where they might have to consider before they buy an Explorer or something like that, isn't going to fit in there. And the barrel roof, it doesn't quite fit the architecture, but I think I don't mind it. I think it's kind of interesting now. I'm a layman, and I don't know. And his point again, to just lay another gable on top of it or anything like that, is just, I don't know. It's just a little different. So I kind of like the whole thing, and I think I almost can support it.
Okay, you know what, let me jump back for a moment, if you don't mind. I have another question for the petitioner. Since we're discussing the garage and the massing of it, what will the new driveway material be, and how will you change the driveway, and are you not changing the apron to the street?
We are not changing the apron to the street.
Okay, so that might reduce a little massing because you may have some coverage there, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And right now, the driveway has a center portion that is asphalt, and then on the right hand, to the south, is a larger parking area that's out of brick, which we are maintaining and extending. And then to the north side is brick that kind of leads into the little patio in front of that secondary entrance, and then extends to this as a sidewalk. All of that's being maintained. We're simply, after we repair things, maintaining the asphalt, maintaining the brick, and extending it to match the new width of the garage.
So you're going to still have it be two materials?
It'll be two materials, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a couple of comments.
Please.
I really am struggling with the barrel roof on the entry. I spent 20 years living in that neighborhood, walking by this house. I know it quite well. And this is not a neighborhood of innovative architecture. And I just personally, and as you say, it's subjective, but personally I would feel more comfortable with a more traditional lines on that. I don't object to the porch idea at all, but I just am not crazy about the arch. I would like to see you, if possible, but it's not a deal breaker, lower the roof line on that shed for the new bedrooms. And I would like to, and the city can follow up with it, I'd like to see some, possibly some recessed panel detailing on those garage doors. And a question and then a comment. Where you've got the wide siding and then the narrow siding below it. That is existing all the way around the house currently?
That is correct.
Okay, but you are going to be replacing all the siding on the house?
That's correct.
Okay. I would just like to see you do the larger exposure all the way, and not drop it down to the 4-inch at the bottom. And I think that was it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I've got a few, and I can sympathize a little bit with the challenge that you've had on adding on to this. You know, as I look at the existing house, everything there seems you know, perfectly proportioned, and the scale of some of the less important elements, the breezeway, garage, they all seem to make sense from a hierarchical standpoint. And I think, and even in your report, or your letter of intent, you suggested that hierarchy was a goal to achieve in this, and I'm not sure you've done it. And I think, you know, part of it has to do with the reality of, you know, I got to get a garage, I need to get, you know, the living space that I need for the bedrooms and all that, and I'm not suggesting that be reconsidered. I mean, obviously that's the goal. How do we do that? How do we create a hierarchy in something that appears in your front elevation to be very heavily weighted to the right or south, and especially if you're looking at it in 3 dimensions where you have that, and I agree it's a massive shed dormer, but obviously you need the space to get the bedrooms. How do we make something massive, not so heavy? Well, one was presented to you in lowering that pitch to just above head height. I'm assuming your head height is 6'9" or whatever. You're going to need a header above those windows. For the first few feet of that, you might have a pitch, and before you get to your 8-foot usable, but the whole thing in front of the window would be a usable space. So I'd like to see you, you know, consider lowering that. Also, you know, for the benefit of those rooms, I think it would be less heavy if there were more fenestration, more window. If that was a little bit more light and airy, and I think that might help as well. And obviously bring more light and ventilation and all the, you know, code things, as well as the niceties of a bedroom up there. And that might, you know, mitigate that slightly, but it's still calling attention, and it still suggests that that's, you know, an element that is heavily weighted versus what it is today, a very single car, pushed back, lightweight. So it's a dramatic change from what's there. And then, you know, to discuss that front porch, I look at this house, I'm like, well, what style is it, and why does that look out of whack with the barrel vault? And I sort of see a New England colonial ranch that has had some additions put on it. I mean, that's, you know, the Bucks County approach, where, you know, the next generation of family picked it up and had more kids, and they added on, and it almost segments itself in that way, where, you know, you can see where the original house is, and then you can see where, you know, the next generation had to expand, and so on and so forth. But I think what's lost here is the original house, the front door, the hierarchy of where do I come into this house? There's 2 doors presented to me. The one's the closest to the garage. Should I go in there? Nope, I'm in the family room. I gotta go to the other. I appreciate the porch as being the thing that calls out attention to the fact that that's where you're supposed to go. And I like the porch. I think, considering it's across from the park, I could see you using it all the time. I mean, sometimes people put porches on just to decorate, and they never, ever sit out on them. I can see you sitting out here every night. But I agree that barrel vault is just something that's just, it doesn't fit the style. It doesn't create that sense of entry, and there's an opportunity for hierarchy there that I think you missed. And part of it has to do with the barrel vault versus a more strong gable. But the other thing I think that would add strength to that main portion of the house would be to raise that porch up a little higher and get a change in eave planes there. So, you know, make it stronger, make it, I mean, you're going to all the trouble of getting a zoning variance for it. You may as well, you know, go for it. And by the way, you can't use the sonotubes for the porches. You're going to need to put a continuous footing and foundation wall under there, just to let you know. But I think that and minor issue, well, maybe not so minor. I think the dormer, especially the one on the left-hand side that's close to the existing house there, it's a little close, and I understand you're lining them up, but I think if you took those two dormers and just brought them in maybe a foot and a half together a little bit more, you'd alleviate some tension there and end up with a better composition on that. But what we're kind of ignoring too is some things that are happening on the rear elevation. I think there's elements there that, you know, obviously it's existing, a lot of it is, but you are adding some dormers, and you are, again, throwing a large mass to the south there that I see an opportunity to mitigate the scale on that a little bit with just a minor tweak. But I think you're there, at least in standpoint of feasible approach. I think there's enough details and such that I'd recommend it go to subcommittee for a little, you know, across the counter kind of an approach to refinements. And I think that's where I'm going to stay. I mean, on the north elevation, you're taking your heavy band board or freeze board or whatever, and you're returning it a little far, or farther than I believe you should. But those kind of things, I think might get you there. But you know, there's a lot here I'm in support of. There's a few things I feel quite strongly about that would help pull the composition together from a standpoint of hierarchy and a little less mass where you really don't want it. And I'd recommend subcommittee on it.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, this is one of the nicer homes, existing homes. It's just a lovely, lovely home, and I think what I've struggled with is how do you kind of transform this, given the need for extra space. And I kind of have the same comments as the rest of the board members. I think that the arch in the patio, it just doesn't strike me as it's kind of incongruent with the rest of the style. Personally speaking, I'm not fond of it. And then that massing, the garage element with the shed dormer, it's just too big. If we could tone that down somehow, it's very simple styling that you've done, and I commend you. You've done this, you know, a nice job getting where you need to get in general. But I think some tweaks, like John said, would be helpful. I really wouldn't support larger garage doors, though. I think that just exacerbates the massing of that garage element, and so I think you do try to have to live with the 8-footers, in my opinion. And then John raised a good point. We really didn't talk much about the east elevation in the back. You know, you're adding quite a bit of building back there, and just curious if there's some relief you could put maybe on the first floor of the garage, maybe a window or two or something that kind of breaks that apart as well. So I think you know, I think the materials are okay, and I think you're on the way there, but I think there are some improvements that could be done in this design.
Okay. So what I'm hearing are just obviously the two main issues of the porch and the garage. I don't see anyone jumping at going for approval yet on this one. Possibly. Steuart?
Possibly, but
Okay.
I don't.
Doesn't
I
sound
don't
like the rest
disagree
of-
with
right.
John.
Okay.
I don't disagree with anyone on the
Okay.
board.
Based on that, would anyone like to make a motion to continue this petition? Or whatever the motion would like to be.
I move we take it to subcommittee. And then I guess the question is well, actually, before I make my motion, I move we take it to subcommittee. And then I guess I don't know if we bring it back to a consent agenda or a full board approval again. Do I need to know that before I submit my
Well,
motion?
that's something we should further discuss. I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
if we're going to continue it or go for
Let's hold on the
consent
motion
agenda.
then and discuss the opportunity, or the possibility of going full board again or consent agenda.
Well, those are two significant changes.
Yeah,
think,
I think it
that-
should come
that
back
would
to the
come-
board.
Back to the
Right.
board. Then I'll move it goes to subcommittee. at which time we follow back with a full board approval,
So continuation.
continuation.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So the motion to continue the petition carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the opportunity for the public to address the board on any non-agenda items. Is anyone from the public here to do that? Seeing none, thank you. Any additional information from staff? Kathy?
Just a reminder that your next meeting is just a couple weeks away. I don't know the exact date of it, but because we delayed this one, you're going to have another one very quickly.
Great, thank you. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. There.